So we will learn about some of the many misconceptions about UPSC. So we will learn about them. Now, one of the very common misconception is that which optional to choose. Okay, so let us see. Now UPSC can be cracked with the help of any optional. Okay, there are actually 48 variety of optionals available in UPSC, and out of those 48 variety of optionals available, there is a full list of 48 optionals, and you can choose any optional uh, without requirement of your educational background. Even if you are an engineer, you can choose history. Even if you are a doctor, you can choose Hindi literature. Okay, so there is no restriction of any your educational qualification. In which field did you graduate, it does not matter. So if someone is physics honors BSc, okay, if someone is BSc in physics honors, still he can choose some other subject. For example, he can choose, for example, maths or chemistry or whatever. Okay, so UPSC can be cracked with the help of any optional out of the 48 variety of optionals available, and there is no restriction whatsoever which optional to choose. There is no restriction based on your educational background. There is no such restriction. Okay, that choose the optional in which you have graduated. That is, so no, there is no such restriction. Okay, so there is no compulsion that you should choose the same optional from which you graduated. Okay, for example, if someone is a BA in history honors, then it is not necessary that he should only take history optional. Okay, there is no such compulsion from UPSC side. Okay, there is no such compulsion from the side of UPSC. Now, so UPSC can be cracked with the help of any optional, whether it is science optional or humanities optional. No matter whatever optional it is. Okay, so with the help of any optional, you can crack UPSC. Okay, so never ever fall under the trap of some teachers that never take XYZ optional in UPSC. Okay, so some of the teachers in Delhi keep saying there was a polity teacher at my time when I was in Delhi in 2011. At that time, there was one polity teacher who used to tell me that please never take geography optional, because geography optional people always suffer. Geography optional students always suffer. So please never take geography as an optional subject. Okay, one polity teacher used to say this in the offline class in Delhi in 2011 when I was there. Okay, so the thing is that it is just a misconception. Okay, you can take any optional and excel with that optional. There is no restriction from UPSC side also, and there is no restriction on you also. Okay, so you can take any optional, there is no problem. But I just want to clear some misconceptions which are there with the people. Okay, and why science optionals are beneficial, that I am going to tell you just after some time. Okay, so never ever fall under the trap of some teachers that never take XYZ optional in UPSC. Now every optional has an upper maximum limit of marks which can be obtained. Okay, so every optional has an upper maximum limit of marks which can be obtained. So let us see. For example, in physics optional, a maximum of 340 marks can be scored. Okay, highest till now, I am talking about highest, means not highest till now, highest till now is 360. I suppose in physics optional someone had scored 360, but those are exceptions. Okay, I am telling about the regular upper limit. Okay, regular upper limit means every year people score the highest which people score, that I am telling you. Okay, so in physics optional a maximum of 340 marks, sometimes I would say rather 340 to 360, but above 360 350 no one can score. Okay, I am giving you a guarantee that above 360 marks in physics optional is impossible. Okay, above 360 marks in physics optional is impossible. Okay, so maximum of 340 can be scored. We should take a generalized case. So 340 can be scored in maximum in physics optional. In chemistry optional also the same, 340 marks can be scored in maximum. Okay, in maths optional however we can score 380 390 marks. Okay, and in anthropology a maximum of 335 can be scored. In zoology maximum of 330 can be scored. Okay, in zoology optional. In PSR optional maximum of 320 marks can be scored. In history optional maximum of 320 marks can be scored. In Hindi literature optional maximum of 310 marks can be scored. Why only 310 in Hindi literature optional? Because in Hindi literature optional you have matras in Hindi, right? In Hindi you have matras, okay? So whether you put chota I matra or badi matra, chota u matra or bada u matra, all those things matter a lot in Hindi literature optional, okay? So as all those things matter, so that's why Chandra Bindu also matters, Anuswar also matters, okay? So all those things matter, right? Because it is language. So because of that, in Hindi literature optional you can maximum score 310 marks. What about history optional? In history optional, there is always ideology involved, okay? For example, if we talk about origin of Aryans, so there might be various different viewpoints of different historians, and although we should go with little bit leftist historians, centrist or leftist historians, because that's what UPSC wants. But the thing is that, and that is the centrist and leftist historians are mostly unbiased. The right wing historians are a little bit biased because of religion getting involved in their psychology, okay? So that's why in history optional, centrist or leftist type of historians are preferred while studying. But still amongst those leftist historians and centrist historians also, there might be various viewpoints, okay? There might be various viewpoints. Now those various viewpoints, if you cover them point by point, what happens is that there is no concrete answer, okay? There is no fixed answer to any question. A student can write different answer, B student can write different answer, C student can write different answer, okay? So that's why as every student is writing different answer, so what happens? The valuation is abstract, okay? Valuation is abstract means, suppose if the student goes with Aryan invasion theory and tells something that why it was rejected and all those things, so the examiner, if he also thinks similar to the student, okay, if the examiner also thinks similar to the student, he is going to give you marks, okay? But if the examiner is a little bit of different opinion as compared to the student, then the examiner will cut marks, obviously. So there is ideology involved in history optional, there is ideology involved in Hindi literature optional, there is ideology involved in PSR optional also, similarly, okay? There is no ideology involved in all these optional. In anthropology also there is a little bit of ideology involved, okay? But as far as these particular optionals are concerned, these optionals, physics, chemistry, maths and zoology, in these optionals there is no ideology, okay? So the thing is that if we keep this zoology as an exception, the thing is that in zoology what happens, you are writing an answer, suppose, so there is complete theory only, there are no numericals in zoology, okay? So as there are no numericals in zoology, that's why the scoring goes to the lower side, okay? Maximum score goes to the lower side because of there being no numericals in zoology. Now in physics optional there are a lot of numericals, and numericals help you score. In physics optional there are a lot of numericals, and numericals help you score a lot, okay? So that's why the maximum score goes up to 340, 350. In chemistry optional there is description also and numericals also. In physics also description plus numerical is there, okay? So because of description your marks reduce, and because of numericals your mark increase. Because in numericals what happens? Because in numericals there is a fixed answer, fixed final answer, and there are fixed steps involved, okay? The steps are also fixed and the final answer is also fixed in numericals. So because of numericals the scoring of physics optional increases. Because of numericals the scoring of chemistry optional increases. Now what about maths optional? In maths optional everything is numerical, right? In maths optional everything is numerical, okay? There is no theory involved in maths optional. As there is no theory involved in maths optional, that's why you can score 380 to 390 marks, okay? And the maths optional is one of the most scoring optionals, okay? That's why it is most scoring, because it has only numericals. Everything has to be solved, nothing is theoretical in maths optional. As every step is fixed, final answer is fixed, okay? Every procedure is fixed in maths optional. So that's why what happens, the maximum score goes up to 380, 390, right? With sufficient practice you can do that. Now after hearing all of this, you will think that is it level playing field for all students? Because you will start thinking that humanities optional people will be on the side of what we can say disadvantage, okay? So humanities optional people will be in disadvantage and science optional people will be in advantage. From here it seems like that. Okay, from here, from this discussion, from this example which I gave you, it seems that science optional people are in advantage and humanities optional people are in disadvantage. But it is not like that. Okay, every optional student of every optional in UPSC has a level playing field, beta. Okay, every optional in UPSC has a level playing field. Okay, there is absolutely nothing like that XYZ person had maths as an optional, so that's why because of maths optional he will be able to do that, he will be able to qualify UPSC, but I have Hindi literature as optional, so how can I qualify UPSC? Such doubts also students get in their mind. Okay, but it is not true actually. Student of every optional in UPSC has a level playing field. Let me tell you with the help of an example. Okay, because more scoring the optional is, for example, maths is the most scoring optional. Okay, maths and animal husbandry, and let us put animal husbandry to the side, because animal husbandry people are very few. Okay, animal husbandry is even more scoring than maths optional, but leave that animal husbandry. Okay, let us talk about maths optional for the time being, because maths optional is the second most scoring optional in the 48 optionals. Maths optional is the second most scoring optional amongst the 48 optionals. So let us discuss why maths optional person and Hindi literature or history optional person, why maths optional person and history optional person both have the level playing field. Let us understand how they are equal in competition. Let us understand. Okay, because more scoring the optional is, more vast is its syllabus. Okay, for example, maths is more scoring optional, history is less scoring optional. So maths is more scoring, so its syllabus is even vaster than the syllabus of history. Okay, because more scoring the optional is, more vast is its syllabus. So as the optional maths has more vast syllabus because it is more scoring, and history has less vast syllabus because it is less scoring. Okay, so more vast is its syllabus, more scoring the optional is, more vast is its syllabus, and thus the student gets less time for GS. Okay, so the person who has maths as his optional, the person who has maths as his optional subject, he will have less time for GS. Okay, and on the other hand, the person who has history as his optional, he will have more time for GS, because history optional is not that much time consuming as compared to maths optional. History optional is not that much time consuming as compared to maths optional. So for a person having history as an optional subject, he will get more time for GS. Okay, so whatever 10 or 20 marks or 30-40 marks he loses in history optional, whatever 30-40 marks he scores less in history optional as compared to maths optional person, that he can compensate with the help of GS. History optional person will compensate the loss because of history from GS. He will compensate that loss from GS. So on the other hand, for less scoring optional, he or she that is less scoring optional is humanities optional. Okay, so if a person having humanities optional gets more time for GS, okay, but he will never score excessively in optional. So the person who has, suppose, humanities optional, so what will happen? He will have more time for GS, but he will never score excessively in optional. Okay, the person who has history as an optional, he will never score excessively in optional, but he will get more time for covering GS. But a person having maths optional will get less time for covering GS, but in maths optional he will score like anything. Okay, he will score excessively in that. Okay, so that is the difference. So everyone has a level playing field then. Everyone has a level playing field then. Let me give you a real life example. If you look at the 2022 All India Rank 1 to 100 list, if you look at the year 2022 All India Rank 1 to 100 list, so clearly in 2022 All India Rank 75, okay, All India Rank 75 of 2022 scored poorly in GS. Okay, so All India Rank 75 of the year 2022 scored very poorly in GS. Okay, and his score in GS, this particular person, AIR 75 person, his score in GS was such a low score that his GS score was in the category of AIR 300. Okay, his GS score, this particular person's GS score was in the category of AIR 300. Okay, whatever marks AIR 300, AIR 400 were scoring in GS, Such were the marks of AIR 75 in GS. Okay, but he scored 380 marks in maths optional. That person scored 380 marks in maths optional. So obviously, because of scoring 380 in maths optional, he got AIR 75. Because of scoring 380 in maths optional, he got AIR 75. Okay, so thus he got IAS because of that. Okay, now similarly, person who had humanities optional AIR 1 of 2022 AIR 1 had history optional and she scored hardly 298. Okay, AIR 1 of 2022 had history optional. She scored hardly 298 in history optional. Okay, but she compensated the loss in history optional because she had history as an optional subject, so she could never score like this. Okay, she had history as optional, so she could never score 380. Okay, it is beyond the capacity of a person having history optional scoring 380. A person having history optional can never score 380 in UPSC. Okay, this is a proved fact. Okay, so she scored 298, which is average score as far as optionals are concerned. But she compensated it by scoring in GS. She scored excessively in GS. Okay, she scored excessively in GS and thus compensated for the loss because of humanities optional. So every optional has a level playing field. Every optional has a level playing field in UPSC. But why do I prefer science optionals? Why do I keep saying that take physics as optional subject? Why do I keep saying all those things? Because the thing is that in science optionals such as physics, the thing is that in physics there are no current affairs. Okay, in physics there are no current affairs involved. Okay, so there is absolutely no need of current affairs. If you take PSIR or history, you will also have to keep updating yourself. In PSIR or history optional or sociology optional or anthropology optional, you will have to keep updated yourself. You have to keep updating yourself with the current affairs which are going on. But if you take physics as an optional subject, the biggest advantage is that there is no need of current affairs, absolutely no need of current affairs in physics optional or any other science optional. There is no need of current affairs. As there is no need of current affairs, your labor a little bit decreases. Your labor decreases a little bit. Okay, and there is no ideology involved, so the examiner will never be unhappy with your answer because it is science optional. So the examiner will be never unhappy with your answer. In history optional or PSIR optional, if you write something political, the examiner might be a little bit frustrated with your answer. He might be angry with your answer. But in physics optional, there is no such thing. There can be never a controversy over the answer. In physics optional, there can never be any controversy over any answer written by you. So that's why I keep saying that take science optionals. I always keep saying that. Although it is against the trend. Okay, against the trend means many people, 90%, 95% people do not have science optionals in UPSC. 95% people, 90% people do not have science optionals in UPSC. Only 5% people have science optionals in UPSC. But still I keep saying that take science optionals. Why? Because science optionals are more scoring also. Although they require a lot of time, they have vast syllabus, they require more time, but still it is value for time. Okay, it is value for time. It is value for time because if you score then you will score excessively. Okay, if you score then you will score excessively. That's why take science optionals. And moreover, there is no ideology involved, there is no current affairs involved. Okay, and moreover in science optionals the questions also keep repeating. Okay, in history optional the questions prior to 2014, in history optional questions before 2014 2013, those questions are not at all important in history optional. Why? Because in history optional the history is getting updated every year. In history optional what happens? History gets updated every year. As history is updated every year, so the questions will change. Okay, but in science optional such as physics, the question which was asked in 1989, the question which was asked in 1985, the question which was asked in 1991, the question which was asked in 2008, the question which was asked in 2004, even that question will be relevant today in physics optional. Okay, or any other science optional, no matter how old the question is. Okay, even 1990s question will be still relevant to you in physics optional. Okay, so that's why I keep saying that take science optionals in UPSC. Okay, do not go for humanities optional, because any questions older than 5 years, okay, in humanities optional, any question which is older than 5 years, it is of no use to you. Okay, any question older than 5 years is of no use. It is of no use in your humanities optional. But in science optional, even a question older than 10 years or 20 years, even that question becomes relevant in science optional. Okay, so you have a big question bank in science optional. You have a very big question bank. Okay, and from that big question bank, the questions keep repeating. If you start all the questions from 1991 till today, that is latest 2023, if you solve all the questions from 1991 till 2023, all the physics optional questions, then you will realize that when you solve all those questions from 1991 till 2023, if your attempt is in 2024, then you will see that 2024 question paper will be from that only. Okay, whatever questions were asked from 1991 till 2023, your 2024 question paper of UPSC will be repeated from all those questions itself. Okay, there will be nothing out of that. Okay, there will be nothing new question. Okay, there can never be a new question made in physics optional. There can never be a new question. But in other optionals, okay, for example in humanities optional, there can always be a new question. Okay, there can always be a new question based on current affairs, so they can make any new question based on current affairs. Okay, so that is the thing. So based on current affairs, they will make new questions every year in GS and humanities optional. But in science optional, they can never make any new question. They can never even twist the question. Okay, in science optional, there is no twist possible. In science optional, even they cannot twist the question. Okay, in other humanities optional, they will twist the question, or they will put the question in a very complex language. Okay, so that is the case with humanities optional. But in science optional, there can never be a twist. The question will be straightforward, right? So that is the difference between humanities optional and science optional. So hopefully you got the thing which I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.